Do you wish healthy eating could be easier? Do you want to be able to use nutrition to boost your brain health and mental health? Have you ever wondered how you could harness the power of your subconscious to make nutrition more natural for you? If you said yes to any of these, then you do not want to miss my interview with Isa Kujawski today. Isa is a functional registered dietitian whose mission is to help chronically stressed individuals rebalance their mind and body through the healing power of nutrition. Using mind and energy awareness, Isa not only teaches what to eat, but how to make eating right easier through the mind-body connection. If you're ready to harness the power of your mind-body awareness to eat right and feel better, then this episode is for you. Hey friend, welcome to the Better Belly podcast. Do you want freedom from bloating and constipation? Do you find yourself up late at night Googling natural constipation remedies, causes for bloating, or recipes and exercises to help constipation? Are you frustrated with the mind game of trying to figure out what foods are helping or hurting your gut? Hey, I'm Allison, mom, wife, and functional gut health practitioner. At a young age, bloating and constipation were my constants. I didn't know what to do and wished I could just live a normal life focusing on my passions, my job, and my family. I was tired of abdominal pain that woke me up at night and wasting time and money on gut health remedies that just didn't work. Breakthrough moment, the functional medicine and osteopathic approach to gut health. In this podcast, you will find natural remedies for bloating and constipation, practical, doable belly exercises and massages, and debunk the myths about what really is causing your tummy problems. So toss out those laxatives and say goodbye to that embarrassing gas. Your gut health is calling. And just as a reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your own health practitioner before you make any changes to your health. Awesome, guys. Well, I'm so excited to invite onto the podcast today my friend, Isa Kujawski. She is a nutritionist and a registered dietitian, an author and a founder of Maya Nutrition. She and I got connected several years ago, and we recently reconnected, and it's been so much fun. She has a great background. She served for over 10 years in active duty in the Navy. And then she lost her veteran brother to suicide. And since going through that, she has dedicated her career to helping people use food as medicine. And she's worked with a lot of veterans themselves, worked with veterans with TBIs, traumatic pain injuries, and PTSD. She's worked with individuals with depression and anxiety, and even ex-NFL players with post-concussive injuries. So she has a wide variety of interesting experiences that she's had, and she's used food to help all these people get and feel better. She's also been featured in places like Mind Body Green, Well and Good, Food and Nutrition, Very Well, Thrive, Eat This and Live Strong, like so many amazing places. So I'm so excited to have Isa on to the podcast today. Isa, thank you so much for coming on to the Better Belly podcast.
Thanks for having me, Allison. I'm so excited.
And Isa, I would love for you to share with us. So I mentioned your business name is called Maya Nutrition, which it has a beautiful sound to it, but it actually has a beautiful meaning as well. Would you share with our listeners just to start off what Maya means and why you chose it?
I actually pronounce it Mia, but it's completely fine because that's part of the story. It's always been kind of my mom's nickname within the family. So it was a great way to kind of incorporate her, but also Mia, MEA, the acronym stands for Mind Energy Awareness. And it was something that was very intentional when I named my business because I wanted to invoke that nutrition goes way beyond food. Thoughts can be nutrition, people can be nutrition for your soul, right? So something that was really true to me in my heart, and something I wanted to express to the clients that I work with.
Awesome. So, and I just remember you talking about the name of your business and thinking, oh, it sounds so beautiful. Isa, I really like how with Mia, you bring up this idea of you said mind, energy, and awareness. This idea that nutrition, it's anything we put into our body, right? How do you work with clients on all three of those levels? What does a typical session or kind of series of coaching look like with you? Because I think a lot of people, when they think of nutrition, they're like, I'm going to go to somebody and they're going to have me write out like a food journal, and then they're going to tell me all the things I'm doing wrong. and then they're going to whip me into shape. But what is it actually? How are you approaching things differently? And how does that actually feel in your sessions?
That's such a good question. And in order to answer that question, let me back up a little bit about my framework of my practice. So the reason that I created Mia Nutrition was because I really wanted to focus on nutrition for mental health and well-being. So that's kind of where it started. Nutrition for mental health, when somebody hears that, it's a very bi-directional relationship, right? So on one hand, it could be your relationship with food and how your attitudes about food shape your eating behaviors. But it can also be flipped around to how the foods that you eat on a biochemical level help with your brain function and your mood balance and all of that. So when we think of mind energy awareness, yes, there's the mind that's captured in that. There's your, the energy of your body, because the body and mind are connected at the end of the day. But then there's also the self-awareness piece. So those are very core pillars of my practice. And when I put this together into practice, after a while, after working with hundreds of people, I realized that I could distill it down to a 3-part framework. And this is where I'll get into more of answering the question of what a session with me looks like. And the 3-part framework is mind-body connection, nutritional medicine, and drainage and detoxification. So the first way that I start working with people is encouraging them not to look for external cues of what to eat, how to eat, when to eat, all of that stuff, but instead tune into their internal God-given cues of their hunger cues, their satiety cues, their interoceptive awareness, right? So really trusting in the fact that your body is already kind of perfectly and biochemically designed with the mechanisms and hormones in place to help you eat when you're supposed to eat and help you eat what you're supposed to eat. Now, where a lot of people have become disconnected with that is when they lose that mind-body connection because of either diet culture or, what they've been brought up hearing about all these conflicting nutrition advice, is that they lose awareness of these cues. And then they use 5% of their logical thinking and not the 95% of our subconscious thinking to inform their eating behaviors. So that first step is to help them with that mind-body connection. Help them to believe that they could heal, to believe that they could listen to their bodies and use that as a natural guide. Then we also look at more of the medicinal nutrition piece, which entails gut health, inflammation, actual nutrition deficiencies, your blood sugar balance. And we incorporate all that because although, yes, it's great to listen to your body, sometimes those cues could get mixed up if from a hormonal and biochemical level, things just aren't working like a well-oiled machine. So we have to use those things synergistically, the mind and the body, and help them work together. And then the last pillar of my practice is I talked a lot about the input, right? The input of nutrition in our body, but also looking at the output of the waste products that our body has to churn and process through every single day. A lot of people, yes, they're putting great things into their body, but they don't realize that their elimination pathways, the process of their body detoxifying on a regular basis is it's sluggish, right? It's not the pathways aren't open, everything's not flowing. So that 3-part framework to me has really invoked kind of the totality of that holistic approach that somebody needs to really get better, feel well, look good, perform at their optimal. So hope that answers your question.
No, it's great. So, I mean, you're working, I heard, working on an awareness level, giving someone the confidence to be in their body again. And in the familiarity, what does it feel like to trust their own body cues and to reconnect with that and almost override this mental training we have to be in our logical left brain side of things, which you mentioned, people might be familiar with this concept of our brain, kind of the power of our brain is like an iceberg. Only 5% of the actual mass of the iceberg is above the water, and the rest of the iceberg is below the surface. And just because it's below the surface doesn't mean it's not there. Like, our brains have this huge subconscious part that isn't what we are thinking as terms of you and I trying to get words out of our mouth, right? To communicate with each other. There's all this other information that we can be working on an intuitive base on all this other things. And it's called our subconscious. And so you're helping clients kind of reconnect with that confidence and working from that level. You're getting rid of any confusing signals like blood sugar imbalance, nutritional deficiencies. And so getting maybe into some of the nitty gritty of like, well, what are they eating? What could they be eating that would help them a little bit more? And then helping support them in talking about how can you basically detox. Can you tell me more? It's so interesting when I hear other practitioners talk about different pillars, like I talk about detoxing, but to me, I'm thinking of, some specific things like castor oil packs or coffee enemas, or maybe a couple supplements I like to work with. What are things that you tend to work with? Because I'm just curious,
Sure.
Are you working primarily with food, or are there other things that you like to lean
Yeah.
on?
I'm actually really glad that you answered this question because I think this is something that's very important to talk about. I think there needs to be more of a distinction between drainage and detoxification, drainage and elimination and detoxification, because one of them is the drainage and elimination is your body's natural process of turning over waste products daily. Detoxification is a much more intentional effort to bind to actual toxins in the body, like heavy metals, and extract them out of the body, right? And the thing is, the body can't detoxify if the elimination pathways aren't open, right? So if you think about the correct, we could call it like an order of operations or a process or a hierarchy that we need to go down to actually help someone truly reset, detoxify, or as I like to say it, give your body an oil change. We first need to, again, make sure that your elimination pathways are open. So stool, sweat, and urine. Things like, are you even having regular bowel movements and emptying out truly? Are you sweating on a regular basis to help with that lymphatic drainage? Is your brain turning over waste products daily? So that's called lymphatic drainage, which is a newly studied term where the brain, turns over toxins, but that can only happen when you're in a state of deep sleep, right? So it's like all of these things need to happen together. You need to be able to sleep properly. Your body needs to produce energy. So we need to make sure you don't have any nutritional deficiencies. And we need to make sure that you're having regular bowel movements. Because if we're dislodging toxins from the body, but you're not having the bowel movements to be able to excrete of those on a daily basis, guess what's happening? They're being reabsorbed and they're being recirculated into the body, and perhaps causing something like a Herxheimer reaction, or so wreaking havoc in the body, basically, right? Because now they're just on the loose. So we need to make sure that if we're truly wanting to detox in the way that detox is scientifically defined, we're going through like at least a 4-month protocol to do that, because we want to follow that order of operations. And key is to make sure that we're actually not introducing changes too quickly, or someone's body may not be able to keep up with that, right? So to answer your question about like whether it's food or supplementation, it's really both. So in my practice, I make sure that I do a thorough screening of somebody to check if they even need to detoxify or if they need help with that, which, because of the population I work with, they're highly stressed professionals. They usually do, So I'm screening them, and then I am educating them on foods that actually help with the detoxification pathways, like the liver and the kidneys, and also putting them on high quality herbal supplements that really help bind onto things like heavy metals, potentially parasites, potentially yeast or fungal overgrowths in the gut.
No, I love it. You mentioned a lot of different systems that you're going to be at least thinking and talking through with your clients: sweating, bowel movements, sleep. I love that you mentioned the lymphatic system. We've actually talked about all these deep drainage pathways. We had a whole drainage pathway series on the Better Belly podcast a couple months ago, and I talked about all these different systems and ways that I like to work with it. And the lymphatic system, that one of the things that we bring up just as like a side thought or side note here is craniosacral therapy is really helpful with, because a lot of times if you have somebody who has had there's a lot of things that can cause restrictions in your craniosacral system, but it's going to limit your brain's ability to detoxify through cerebral spinal fluid. And one of the major ways, though, that system gets totally disrupted is concussions. And it's interesting that that's one of your crossovers of interest that you have in the work and work that you've done. And that's something that I've really encouraged a lot of our listeners to get craniosacral therapy, because it's going to impact their sleep and their brain detoxification and their focus and their mood and all sorts of things, so that they can get the sleep so they can detox on a regular basis.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've ever heard of that in terms of craniosacral therapy, or if we talked about it before, but I mean, you're working on every level with a client,
Yes.
not just like, here, eat this food. And
No,
it's
yeah. Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think, Allison, to be frank with you, I think this is why we also kind of align, right, in our philosophies, because we recognize that even something as simple as the gut and the brain are connected, right? You mentioned the compromised lymphatic drainage in individuals with like traumatic brain injury or concussion, that can miswire signals to the gut and create gut dysbiosis, or an imbalance of good bad bacteria that could cause, compromise in the lining of the gut wall, that could cause things to leak out of the gut. And guess what? Those things that leak out of the gut can now kind of cross the blood-brain barrier and cause inflammation in the brain, right? So there's so many different things that we have to factor into the whole care, and helping a client really heal, feel better, and create a new identity for themselves and a new life.
Yeah. And I think that even just listening to this podcast, I'm sure is helpful in turning on the lights for some people of like, what would it really be like to work with a really holistic nutritionist? Because I think a lot of times nutritionists, not to knock them, but who work in a hospital setting, they're only really allowed, they're only supposed to talk about just food, what you're putting in your body, things like that. But if you're working with someone like yourself, who's looking at a lot more things, they can expect to have a much bigger package and a much bigger awareness, where you might say, hey, look, your relation, you eat what you're supposed to eat, but it's maybe other things going on that are causing problems, and you would see some of those holes. One thing I'm interested in talking about, I mean, you have an explicit interest in people with mental health problems, whether that's anxiety, depression, PTSD, stress, that's kind of on their minds. Do you come across people who either reach out to you, or you hear them talking and they want help with their mental health, but they don't quite see, well, how could working with a nutritionist really make me feel better? And almost like a disbelief, can you actually help my stress? Do you see that? And if so, what are some of the things that you talk about, either directly to those people, or how do you think about someone who might be struggling with, could working with a nutritionist really help my mental health? Really?
Right. That's actually such a great question. And sidebar is, I've thought about that a lot too, because I do kind of, the messaging of my work is, nutrition for mental health, but obviously it goes way beyond that. And I don't even think people are a lot of people are even making that connection to even look for that type of service, right? So but if somebody were to come to me and not really understand, but be intrigued, because a lot of people are intrigued. I think many people have fundamentally realized that the food that they put into their body does affect the way that they think and feel and show up in the world. I would encourage them to think about the side effects of simple things, like even a nutritional deficiency could scientifically backed data to show that even a nutritional deficiency in your B vitamins or even vitamin D can lead to depression or anxiety, right? Or this is something that I have recently incorporated more into my practice, is nutrigenomics. How does your genetic makeup influence your nutrition and the differing amounts of micronutrients that your body even needs? So there are genes that influence different enzymes like MTHFR or COMT, that they influence the individual's ability to make things like neurotransmitters, or to be able to detoxify properly, right? So kind of working within the realm of those things that are measured and backed by by the literature is something that I will talk about first to kind of get a little bit more buy-in to the fact that nutrition is such an important piece. I mean, even our neurotransmitters, which dictate the state of our mood and our focus, neurotransmitters are proteins made of amino acids. And if we don't get enough of those amino acids, then we can't manufacture those neurotransmitters properly. If our gut is imbalanced, and many of our neurotransmitters are primarily produced in the gut, then guess what? We are not thinking in the way that and feeling the way that we want to in our brain. So I encourage them to explore some of the resources that I offer that are actually free on my website, and from there they can really start to make that connection.
Tell me more about the free resources.
Yeah, so I have a pre-recorded masterclass that's available if you go to meanutrition.com/links. That will lay out all of these things that I'm about to tell you. A free masterclass called Mental Health Nutrition. I have a free mental health nutrition PDF or guidebook that just really simply lays out the ways that nutrition and mental health are connected. And I also do offer free consults to anyone who's kind of on the fence about how this work can impact them in a positive way.
And just so our listeners know, we will have these as links in the show notes, of course. But I want to play devil's advocate for a moment, Isa.
Yeah.
Because I've definitely had clients come to me before and they say, I've definitely have got problems going on, but my primary concern is mental health. And if I work with you, will my mental health get better? And I don't like you. We can't, in medicine, we can't make promises. Like, what we can say is, I'm going to clean up your body and that should set you up to feel better. But like, we can't make promises. But one of the things you said, and one of the things I tend to hear is people sometimes, if they're aware of some of the literature on kind of food and mental health, they might be aware of nutritional deficiencies. And so one of the things I've heard people say is, well, can't I just take a supplement to get that B vitamin or get that vitamin D and not have to work with you? Like, why do I have to work with you? So I want to play that devil's advocate. How would you respond to, can't I just take a supplement? Why do I have to work with you if I want my mental health to get better?
Yeah. I mean, supplements can definitely work for some people. We do have to realize though that deficiencies are just one small part of what could be throwing your body off of balance. Sorry. I talked about, your genetic makeup. I talked briefly about blood sugar balance. If you're craving sugar and you don't know why, that, yes, I mean, a lot of people tend to blame that on willpower. I don't think that's necessarily has to do with willpower. That has to do with the chemistry of your body. It could even be due to a yeast or candida overgrowth in your gut. I'm just kind of throwing out random things here. But and I would also challenge the supplement thing and say, do you even know what supplement you need, right? This is why we have some functional lab tests that we can provide to be able to pinpoint and not overburden the body with extra things that it now has to go and process through. Also, a quick word about like a food first approach is that nature has okay, let me rephrase that. There is something to be said about the synergy of whole foods, right? I truly believe that there is a non-random kind of like food has come together in a non-random way where the sum of its parts is greater, the sum total of its constituents is greater than extracting or isolating just one nutrient from the food or whatnot in the form of a supplement, which may not even be what you think it is. The supplement industry is highly unregulated, so it's very important to use brands that are of high quality and have a good reputation. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of factors that could be missed if somebody thinks that a supplement will solve their problems. I also want to just back up and say that yes, mental health issues can be due to situational and circumstantial reasons 100%. It's not all biochemical, it's not all chemistry. And I don't want to I don't want to come across and say like, this will be the cure all or the end all to your problems, right? Because I don't think it's either or. I think it's both and. They both need to be the adjunct and work together to create the best result for somebody.
One thing I'd like to tell clients who do work with me is, you know, make sure if you've done the counseling and you've done the medication and you've done, you know, weeding out toxic people in your life and you've done whatever you could do for the kind of classic mental health, taking care of yourself in a through psychological help, if that has only gotten you so far and you're really plateauing, you feel like you're just banging your head and trying the same things over and over again, and trying new counselors and trying new group therapy and trying, and you're just spinning your wheels, that there's an increased likelihood that you have a biochemical component that could be this combination of food and pathogens and toxins and poor drainage or drainage pathways that aren't very open. So that's one thing that I've said, but I just wanted to hear your take on it because I know that can be a little bit of, okay, I understand. Well, why can't I just do it on my own? And part of the thing is the other thing that resonated with me, at least, that I find is true in my own health, let alone when I'm working with other people, is that they can only see a very small slice of the pie. And it's our jobs as an outsider to help them see what they might be missing, even though it might seem like such a simple solution.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time people are like, why didn't I see that? Because it is obvious. Like when it gets down to it, everything's like the most right answers always seem obvious or self-evident. But it takes somebody else getting you there to say, okay, now I can weed through all the other things, all the other blog posts and all the other thoughts I've had and all the things I've tried and really get to what I really need.
I know. I thank you for saying that, right? Because to a lot of my clients, I say, it's not necessarily that you don't have the information at your disposal on Google even, right? It's the fact that you can outsource that to me and have me tell you exactly what you need to do step by step so that you don't have to focus on this every day and you can focus on the things that you're passionate about, right? And at the same time, like, you don't know what you don't know. Like, I just found out several months ago that I have a genetic mutation that predisposes me to depression, anxiety. I have a family history of suicide. I would have spent thousands of dollars years ago to have somebody enlighten me about that fact about myself because it's so easily like treatable. It's so
right.
I have to take this one supplement more so than someone else does, but just even doing that has such a big astronomical change in the way that I show up. And if I had known that, I could have taken away years of struggle that I had to go through just to find that out on my own after like years of my own education and being eventually privy to the fact that that's a thing, you know?
Yes. It takes away this self-blame. You mentioned willpower as a component of like sugar cravings. Yeah, I think I've covered so many times on this podcast how willpower is rarely the problem with my clients when it comes to sugar cravings or it's actually microbiome imbalance, it's blood sugar imbalance, it's insulin resistance, and we can help all of that go away. And then they suddenly realize there's this like light in their eyes. It wasn't me. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't that I'm just some nasty person who likes being anxious. It's not that I'm unteachable or that I'm stubborn or that I'm stuck. It's just that there was this missing piece of information and everybody else could, get from this, cross this bridge, but I just didn't have a bridge to even cross, so.
Right. Yeah.
And building that link and it's something small, I have several clients and even a couple of colleagues who done gene work and discovered one supplement they need like twice as much of that they just would have never gotten that, because it's just not your quote unquote, like general or generic good advice. It doesn't fall under that because it's not generic, it's specific.
Right. And that's why I want to say, like, to anybody who feels like all their routine lab work is normal and the doctor says like everything's normal, you're perfectly healthy, but you I like to say you're the master and hero of your own body. If you feel like something is off inherently, it's because something is off, right? And I felt that way for so many years. I was like, there's something like not completely in balance within me. And I don't want to be a hypochondriac and like everything, seems normal and everybody tells me I'm perfectly healthy, but I just don't feel like something is completely right. And when I found out about this genetic mutation, obviously, like it's not ideal, but it was almost like, yes, like I was right. Maybe, yeah. Anyway, so I just want to tell everybody like you're not alone, and there are ways that you can be helped that go beyond the confines of like traditional medicine.
For sure. Moving in from this conversation of disbelief, what I would like to hear is what are some stories of clients you've worked with? I would just love to hear like as much or as little as you want to share of clients who came to you struggling with mental health stuff, whatever the nature of that was, and maybe a little bit, even briefly, of what you had to do or whatever you want to say on that, and then where they ended up, how long it took them, where they're at now. What are some of your favorite stories of client experiences that you've had?
Yeah, definitely. And I want to just preface this by saying like, yes, I work a lot with individuals with mental issues, but also with gut health issues as well. Those are cases that I like to work with too, or people with like fatigue or, low energy. But for example, I worked with somebody, she was going through, she had eczema. She had a lot of eczema. She was having episodic, depression, anxiety. She had a lot of weight gain that she felt like she couldn't let go of. Not that she was hyper focused on losing weight, but it just there was an imbalance in her and something didn't make sense, right? So we worked together for like 6 months to a year, and she was really able to naturally lose about 40 pounds by lowering her inflammation, because a lot of it we think was inflammation. Her skin got so much better. She has a new lease on life, right? She doesn't feel kind of weighed down by her by the mood symptoms that she was going through. Her energy is higher. She's a dancer, so she was able to get into a school that she's really happy with in their dance program. So yeah, that was the example of a great client shift that I saw. Another individual that I worked with, he had a history of a traumatic brain injury, but he just felt so sluggish, so weighed down. His stomach was completely distended and inflamed for many years. Like those really hard stomachs that he just like, he didn't feel well at all. He was having like diarrhea every day. We actually didn't even make that many like astronomical shifts, but he was consistent. He did what I told him to do. He lowered his inflammation, and in 3 months' time, he lost about 40 pounds. His skin was glowing. He felt like a different person, right? So his depression was gone. So those are a couple of client cases that I like to share, because it's really awesome to see how, yes, individuals' health rebalances, but as a result of that, they become a new identity. And that's really what we're after, right? To help people live a healthier, happier life.
No, that's so good. Do you have any stories of anybody with mental health stuff going on?
Other than the ones that I shared. I'm sorry.
Oh, those two people both had, I didn't know you listed a lot of stuff other than mental health things going on, and it actually didn't sound primarily mental health to me.
I mean, yes, because there's like a constellation of symptoms, right? But yeah, I
Sure.
did mention the two. They did have depression,
Okay.
but I mentioned that within. You could cut this out, but yeah,
Oh
I
no,
mentioned that when
I
I was
will.
going through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you had these two people who both had depression going on in their lives, but of course they have all these other things going on. I mean, how could you not? And sometimes people think, well, I'm depressed. Of course I'm overweight because I don't want to go out or I don't want to eat right or whatever it is. But it's not so much tackling the depression first. You just tackle whatever it is, the weak points. In my work, I always say healing opportunities.
Hmm.
You
Right.
found the healing opportunities in FDN language, helps them lower their inflammation because you address those healing opportunities, whether it was, nutritional imbalances or whatever was going on with them. And then their
Hmm.
body just magically start, quote unquote, it feels like magic, right? Losing
Hmm.
weight, skin gets healthier, there, and then the depression or the mental health aspect of it just lifts. And so it's not about needing to tackle these things head on,
Hmm.
but saying what about your body makes it a bad environment for you to be in, like your brain, your heart, your organs. What about your body's your all those
Hmm.
organs are telling you, hey, this is not a great environment for us to be in. We feel slightly toxic all the time. And I often say, skin problems is a huge thing that I see in our clinic, and
Hmm.
they just go away because the skin is it's one of the body's main detox pathways. And so if you are not detoxing well through pooping and peeing, or you have an excessive amount of toxins you're dealing with, guess where it's going to go? As an overflow, your skin. And your skin's like, we are not designed to handle this. So it's the
Hmm.
acne and it's the rashes. So again, it kind of seems magical to these people and to our clients, honestly, to us too, right? It's
Hmm.
like you just want to
Absolutely.
cry every time someone gets better. You're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so no, thank you so much for sharing those stories. I think stories help ground people in, okay, you say all these nice things, but like tell me about some actual people who came into your doors and like
Hmm.
had these problems. So um one of my last questions that I love asking any of our guests is, if you could have everyone know one thing about your area of expertise, what would it be?
Ooh, I feel like what I'm about to say is really cliche, but I would say that healing is non-linear, right? So, yes, you can work with somebody for about 6 months and you can have a new lease on life, but life has its ups and downs. So it's really about what you kind of do with the information that you're instilled with. That makes the biggest difference over time. And I keep using the word identity, right? One of the pillars that I mentioned, mind body connection. Yes, we mentioned like the internal cues, but I think if you can create and get clear on the identity that you're trying to become, then your subconsciousness over time will be able to create a roadmap, a blueprint, and reverse engineer that in a way that you would not expect. So, yeah, I guess healing is nonlinear, and create that clear picture of the identity that you want to become.
I love that second one. I haven't had anyone say that on the podcast yet, but it's true. And I think I see this in my clients. I've seen it in myself. When you've been sick so long, you can't quite imagine. I mean, you can imagine in a sort of wishy way, like, I really wish I wasn't in pain all the time, or I wish I could wake up in the morning and have energy. Like there's this vague concept, but to actually say, I actually believe it's possible, and to pursue it as if it could be possible, is like a whole different level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times what I see is, if you don't have a solid concept of allowing yourself to pursue that identity, as crazy and far off as it might seem, to allow yourself and say, I need to run after this identity and have a clear idea of what this person is like, what they feel like, what they look like, what's going on in their life. When you then follow that, it means that you could say, when you get the opportunity to work with someone like you, someone like me, or whoever it is that they need to work with, they can say yes, rather than saying, what I see is, if you don't have that identity set and you're not running after it and letting yourself actually run after it, and you're kind of pulling in and saying, well, I want to stay safe, or well, what if it doesn't work? That's what happens. If you're not saying, I have to run after this because this is who I really am, and I'm gonna make the wisest choice I can with as much knowledge as I can, but like actually move forward. Then if you're not doing that, you're just going to say, well, I heard this nice lady on a podcast and she actually like, I was actually really connecting with what she's saying, but it might not work. And what if I actually don't get better? And you kind of shrink again,
right?
You get back into your little hole of kind of fear. And so I identify with that because I feel like that's something that I've had to do in my own life. And I see is honestly the breaking point with a lot of clients that I work with. It's not them getting labs done, which we love at Better Belly. It's not, the supplements. It's not the nutrition change. It's them way back at the beginning saying, yes, I believe I can get better. I'm going to move forward because I'm chasing after that identity. I can see so clearly in my mind.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes, you have to believe that you can heal. You have to believe that you can change, or the change is not going to happen. Right. So, yes, I completely agree.
Awesome. Well, Isa, I know we're going to have listeners who are going to want to connect with you further. How can our listeners connect with you after listening to this podcast episode?
Absolutely. So again, my company is called Mia Nutrition, MEA Nutrition. So you can find me on meanutrition.com. I do suggest you go on meanutrition.com/links, LINKS. That will direct you to some free resources I have and a free consult with me as well.
Wonderful. And we have plenty of links where people can follow you, stalk you, and connect with you that you've shared with us. So Isa, thank you so much for coming onto the Better Belly podcast. It's been fun to have you on here after just knowing each other for years now, several years.
Yes.
And thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Allison. I had so much fun.
Hey friend, I hope you loved this episode. If you've been a fan for a while or newly loving this podcast, can you do me a favor? Drop into Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. When you leave a review, you do so much. You help me know you're listening. You can tell me what you're loving so I know what to make more of. And you help others by boosting this podcast so other people like you can find the podcast too. I mean, it's a win-win-win, right? So if you want a way to pay it forward, just go to Apple Podcasts or click the link in my show notes and leave a rating and review. And if you want some more free stuff, just head over to my free Facebook group, betterbellytherapies.com/Facebook, and you can get access to all of my free support for you, including some Facebook group exclusive stuff like my podcast episode vault, where you can search the Better Belly podcast by topic and find exactly what you need to expedite your healing. I cannot wait to see you in there. Catch you guys next week.